This is the unfiltered feed. The unfiltered feed.
Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Unfiltered Feed podcast. And finally, we are here to record our weekly podcast after a series of previews and predictions and all the pre IPL stuff. So, we have got the IPL going, and now we are back to our weekly podcast. So, I've got with me Yash, who has worked quite hard in the past couple of days for TUF. So, how are you, and did you enjoy the opening weekend?
Hello, first of all, to everybody. You're seeing me very often nowadays. And it's been a really nice weekend, as you rightly said. We had the IPL starting and also a very good Formula One race. So it's been quite an eventful weekend. As you can see, I haven't had enough sleep, so I'm looking forward to go to bed today.
Yeah, and on the other hand, I've had some excess sleep, so I'm off my bed and in my chair for this one. And seeing how my excitement levels were in the previous video, I took a correct step to get back to my usual place. So, we'll be talking about the opening weekend. As of recording, two games have been completed, and
Yeah.
for a surprise, we had just a single game on Sunday, which will change from next week onwards. So, Mumbai Indians versus Kolkata Knight Riders, and there is a lot of history related to this rivalry because of course, the auspicious owners and a lot of things have happened in the past. But if you look at it from a scoreline perspective, Mumbai Indians have generally dominated. So I was expecting MI to do well, and though there is also the big thing that they haven't won their first game in 13 years, these two kind of legacies were up against each other, and MI managed to break their 13-year curse with a thumping of KKR. So I think we watched the game, at least half the game together. So what do you think? Your very initial reactions, looking forward to the rest of the season for MI.
Yeah, I'm super excited after today because MI of have always had a pretty strong side, at least in the last few years. But the only problem that they've had is they never started off well. Even last year, I think they lost the first four out of five matches, and then they were always on the back, on the backside in the IPL, and they were always trying to qualify instead of the top two. So this time it's a bit different, and it's very strange for me to see MI winning the first match. I think the two contradicting stats were that MI hadn't won their first game since 2012. At the same time, MI had beaten KKR at the Wankhede 10 times out of the last 12 times they met. So one of the two stats was going to break, and I'm happy that the earlier stat broke.
Yeah, I think the way KKR started, I was a bit surprised because I had just a week earlier bashed Ajinkya Rahane on the podcast and he just came out all guns blazing. But of course, eventually he did slow down, and that is where the game kind of shifted. I think MI were taken by surprise at the start by Allen and Rahane, and then once Allen fell, things kind of started to dwindle away. But I have to appreciate Rahane. He kept going for a bit, but then eventually ran out of steam. And that phase in between, I think, where Bolt and Bumrah bowled back-to-back overs and didn't concede many, and then you had Shardul come in and pluck the fruits of those efforts. He picked three wickets, and I think that middle phase really set them at least 15 to 20 runs behind.
Yeah, I think we saw that happen in the previous match as well, where SRH, even though they had terrific batters, they still had to slow down after losing wickets. So that's what happened to KKR as well. Although their score was really good, I think Hardik Pandya at the end, in his interview, said that once they saw KKR scoring 78, he knew that the pitch was very good to bat on. So he didn't doubt his bowlers at all. He just thought that the pitch was very easy. And that was the case because MI also had a great start. But I think it really helps to have a lot of experience in the middle because that's exactly what KKR lacked. And even yesterday, maybe RCB, they could take advantage because of the experience they had with Krunal and Suyash and etc. So as you mentioned today, those middle overs were the turning point.
Yeah, I think I was a bit surprised seeing Shardul start ahead of Deepak Chahar. We don't know if Deepak was injured or they specifically made this call, but it turned out to be a golden move. And Shardul Thakur, in his very first game for Mumbai Indians, got a Player of the Match award, something that he didn't do in 57 games for CSK, which is quite
Oh,
a stat. And he bowled really well, 3 for 39, where
yeah.
the rest of them were tonked. I think he deserves the credit, and he got the important wickets as well. And I was a bit sad seeing Allah Ghazanfar go big. I was expecting him to do well. I think at one point his balls were a bit easy to predict, and there wasn't much in the pitch, so it was going to be hard for him. And I think other than Allah, most of them did really well. Hardik as well came back and bowled a good over, got a wicket. Bumrah, of course, it's time we don't talk about him because it is just embarrassing for the rest. He didn't pick a wicket, but I really feel he was the difference in the end because none for 35 on that pitch in those conditions, bowling two in the death. I think he's a bona fide legend.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually very impressed with Trent Bolt as well because he hasn't been playing a lot of internationals, so he's not playing at the highest level. And he didn't really look out of sorts. He came in and in the power play as well, he gave away only 10. And then they brought him back in the middle overs and he did a great job. I think the logic behind playing Shardul maybe was that with Deepak Chahar, you had too many bowlers who were good in the power play specifically because you know that Trent Bolt and Hardik Pandya also like to bowl in the power play. And with Deepak Chahar and Allah Ghazanfar also playing, basically lacked a bit of option in the middle. So bringing Shardul, that was the move, and that worked out really well because he was bowling those cutters and those short of the length balls, which was very tough to hit, and he got a lot of wickets by bowling the slow ones. I think Rahane and Finn Allen, both of them got out to in a similar fashion. And then for Green, I think he just got lucky because Green could have literally hit that shot anywhere and he hit it straight down the throat of Shofin Rutherford. So that was the lucky charm that Shardul has.
Yeah, and I think talking about MI's bowling, we did talk about it in the preview as well that the 12th player is basically they're just carrying him at the
Yeah.
Indian spinner, and that is exactly what happened. Mayank Markande was there, but he wasn't needed. He just bowled a single over, if I'm not wrong, and was taken down. But they, of course, have so many options that they didn't really need him. I was a bit surprised to see them subbing out Jasprit Bumrah to get in Surya Kumar Yadav. I know the game was already kind of sealed, but you don't generally sub out your best bowler because you never know when you need him if you go into a super over or things get tough later on. So that has been a general pattern, but I was surprised to see that. Of course, I'm sure they weren't expecting the game to go into the super over, but that would be interesting to see what they do in the future. And talking about the second innings, of course, Rohit Sharma and Ryan Rickelton both started off in sublime fashion. I think the first couple of overs, KKR were quite good with the new ball. Vaibhav Arora especially. But then once Rohit started his onslaught, I think even Ryan Rickelton felt a bit comfortable and they just killed the game with their opening partnership.
Yeah. It didn't even feel like Rohit was away from T20 cricket for so long. This is exactly what I said about Kohli yesterday, and that applies to Rohit as well, which actually shows how legendary they are because I think Rohit mentioned, or I think Kohli mentioned in an interview that the time away from international cricket is actually allowing him to kind of work on his batting more and adapt to the modern way of T20 cricket. So it's actually a good thing for him and Rohit as well. And with the improved fitness for Rohit, I think he's able to sustain for longer and play a few longer innings, like we also saw in ODI cricket. So I hope that he continues this momentum, and I'm happy that my initial hunch was correct. And I think this is going to be a great year for Rohit Sharma.
Yeah, I think the one thing that he has worked on is his fitness, of course, but what that has enabled is he is still a great boundary hitter. He was a great boundary hitter. He has always been that. But the thing that he could add to his game has been strike rotation. And if you remember, previously he used to play a lot of dots in between those boundaries, and that meant that he didn't really get into rhythm. He was either a boundary dot, so it didn't get into that flow, and that is what happens when you aren't good at rotating strike. So that is something he has done. At least in the first game, I could notice it. He was
Yeah,
looking to get off strike and wasn't trying to hit every ball for a boundary. And of course, the loose ones he picked. And once he got settled in, I think he saw more and more of those loose ones. And there was a brilliant knock. I think that was his fastest 50 in the IPL. And he just carried on, which is really good. And that is another thing that his fitness has enabled him to do, that is play longer and without
yeah,
get losing his shape or without kind of losing his
shift.
ability to hit. So that is
And
good to see.
the best part is that he fielded for 20 overs before that. So it's not like he came in as the impact sub. He was on the field and he was actually quite involved as well with the captaincy. I think during the timeout, I saw Rohit and Hardik having a long discussion. I think that was after the first timeout where KKR were looking quite good. So that's a big advantage for Hardik as well because Rohit, he's been such a successful captain. And last year, and I think the year before that as well, most of the time he spent in the dugout while MIO fielding. So that has to be a big advantage for the team.
Yeah, having two World Cup winning captains to guide you is a blessing, and then having a cheat code in Bumrah. So, Hardik Pandya is quite a lucky man, I would say. So, talking about the finish, talking about KKR's bowling, I think we talked about Vaibhav Arora, who was decent in his first over, but then he also came back and bowled some absolute pies to Rohit Sharma. Blessing Muzurbani, I would say, is still getting into the rhythm. And Varun Chakravarti, I really hope he can do something about his form because it has gone down rather quickly since the
Yeah,
World Cup. Sunil Narine, I think I actually felt that KKR were jolted by Rahani's injury mid-game, and Rinku Singh didn't look that prepared to lead the side. A few of his bowling changes were questionable. The under usage of Sunil Narine especially. And then we have to talk about their impact sub Karthik Tyagi. I did make a bold prediction of him being the emerging player of the season. I think he started off really underwhelmingly, but then he picked up his game, and I think he ended really well with his slower ones and the cutters. He got an idea of how to bowl on the pitch. So he seems to be a prospect, but do you think Rinku Singh couldn't manage his resources very well?
yeah, I think so. Rinku has never really captained in the IPL ever before. So I honestly feel they should have handed over the captaincy to Sunil Narine because he's the only other experienced player in the side. Because literally everybody else is either new to the IPL or new to cricket itself. Narendra, I think, has captained West Indies and he's also captained the Knight Riders in the CPL, if I'm not wrong. So he's got at least some experience. And like you said, the bowling choices were not the most obvious ones because Naren ended up bowling only 3 overs. And he is your leader in terms of experience and also he's an IPL great. So you should have given him 4 overs. And regarding Varun Chakravarti, there's a very interesting stat that I came across. In his last 23 overs, he's gone for 270 plus runs. And that is the worst economy for an international spinner in all of T20s. So no spinner has gone for more than 270 runs in 23 successive overs, which is very terrible because at I think only 3 to 4 months back, Chakravarti was the biggest match winner for India, and we were saying that he's going to be the secret weapon for us in the World Cup, and suddenly things have changed, and now he's become absolutely clueless. One pattern that we were starting to see in the World Cup was that if they took him down in the first few balls, then he would try to get the over done with quickly. And Rohit Sharma knew that because I think of the very first 2 balls, he hit him for a 4 and 6, and that completely destroyed Chakravarti's momentum. And ever since that part of the match, KKR basically lost all the hopes because Chakravarti and Naren were the only two saving graces for them. And Once Emma took them down, it was all over.
Yeah, I think that was another point that we decoded on this podcast a few months prior, which is Varun Chakravarti. If he goes for runs in his first over, he generally tends to lose his patience and just resort to defensive bowling, which he doesn't do very well. So, for such insights, I think you should keep listening to our podcast. You got a bit of a mid show plug in. And one thing that I want to stress upon here is Cameron Green. Of course, for those who don't know, he registered in the auction as a batter initially, and then he came out in an interview and said that that was a mistake by his manager and he wanted to sign as an all-rounder because he is available to bowl for the entire season. And this is what he said, and it's not just speculations. He did mention it that he's available to bowl. And now that the IPL has begun, and you have seen Cricket Australia being very strict with their players and not allowing many of them to play due to workload management. Mitchell Stark, Josh Hazelwood, Pat Cummins, they're working really hard and grounds up with all of them. And they have also set a certain set of instructions for Cam Green and has instructed him to not bowl in the tournament, which is, I think that is a bit hard done for KKR. They've spent
Yeah.
so much money on him, and then, of course, they want to utilize him in the best way possible, which Cricket Australia aren't allowing them to do. Ajinkya Rahane was asked about this in the post match conference, and he said, "Ask Cricket Australia, I can't answer this." So, there's clearly a directive from Australia. And do you think he should even be playing as a pure batter ahead of someone like a Tim Seifert or Rachin Ravindra in this case?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because KKR, all their bowlers are somehow not able to bowl either because of injury or because of what's happening with Cam Green. I actually don't even know if this is true because for some reason the commentators were absolutely clueless about this during the match. I heard Kevin Peterson, Michael Clark, Harsha Bhogle, and Ravi Shastri, and all of them were questioning why Cam Green wasn't coming in to bowl.
That's
And
more to do
this,
with their underpreparedness.
yeah, but even ordinary fans like us have known this for the past week because it was out, and especially on Twitter, there were a lot of rumors and opinions. So I'm not quite sure if this is true or not. I think Rahane did clarify that it's a directive from Cricket Australia, but I think they don't really have any other options. Rachin Ravindra is a spinner, and if you've got the likes of Chakravarti and Naren, you probably won't need the spin of Rachin Ravindra. So if they can bring in an all-rounder, maybe they could try and play him, but I don't really see a lot of options for them. I was joking at one point that maybe DJ Bravo himself should come in and bowl, and he would do a better job. But that was just a joke because their coaching staff is absolutely stacked. They've got Watson, Bravo, Tim Southey, Abhishek Nair, and I think Owen Morgan is also going to join. So I hope some of them can inspire the players that they have in the squad.
Yeah, I think they have Rachin Ravindra and Tim Seifert and Rovman Powell on the bench. So I would assume if Cam Green isn't available, he's definitely not available to bowl. He's definitely not the best batter out of the lot. Tim Seifert has specifically been good as a partner to Finn Allen. I know it's too early and Rahane did do well in the opening spot, so it's not going to be an immediate move, but they can surely think of it because Cam Green, if he's not going to bowl, you might as well give that number three spot to someone like Anga Krish and then get
Yeah,
someone like a Rovman Powell lower in the batting to strengthen your finishing. So I hope Cam Green begins to bowl a bit later in the tournament because he hasn't actually played any competitive cricket in a while. He's just played county cricket over there as well. He hasn't bowled much. So, what is the workload management if there is no work done? So, that is what I think a couple of experts also raised that point, and I would like to raise it as well because T20 cricket is some of the easiest ways you can get into your rhythm and begin to
yeah,
bowl. If you're at the very lowest stage of your workload, this is how you can gradually increase it. I can
yeah,
understand it for someone like a Pat Cummins or Mitchell Stark who are coming or recovering from injuries and are proper bowlers. So I know a 21 test in the next year
Yeah.
So that is going to be a record-breaking number of tests, but that doesn't mean that he should be wrapped in a cotton wool and kept till then.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point because Cam Green is never going to be their fifth or fourth bowler. I think that would have been a sensible request from Cricket Australia if they requested KKR to not make Green bowl 4 overs every single match. I think I would have understood that. But I think if he bowls 1 or 2 overs every game, it's actually better for Green because he can kind of practice or simulate his bowling in a match situation, which will only help him and Australia in the long run. But this is something weird because it's not just with Green, it's also with all the Aussie bowlers. So if they don't want their bowlers to bowl, then why are they even sending them to the IPL? They could just declare or avoid giving them an NOC so that the teams can actually find replacements and at least strengthen their squads. Because right now it's a loss-loss situation because the player is not gaining any experience and the team is also stuck with the player without any replacement.
Yeah, I think this will have an impact on Aussie interest in the auction in the coming years because you can't really give such a directive at the last moment when teams kind of build their squads well in advance, and when they don't know about such things in advance, then it's going to really hamper with their preparations. So I think that is something that teams will keep in mind. They've got an elephant memory in these kind of things. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this one pans out over the rest of the season.
You could probably share your thoughts about the RCB victory because I made a video about that and I'm sure you must have watched the video. If you haven't, then it's a shame.
I
But
did.
do you think I missed any points or would you like to add something to the analysis?
Yeah, I feel you did talk about most of the things. Virat Kohli is the king, and you can't beat him in a run chase. So that is the kind of the statement from yesterday's game. Whatever the chase is, he just knows how to mold his game according to the situation, and it never really feels like he's playing too slowly or too quickly, as you mentioned. And he just knows the pace, which is quite a skill to have. And he makes it look easy, but you can ask any player out there, it is very difficult to kind of master that skill. That is why people say he's the chase master. I think he scored his 64th 50 yesterday, and he's got 7 or 8 hundreds to go with it in the IPL, which is quite remarkable. And again, yet again, he was not out, which is the important part, and at a strike rate of 180. So, if you are kind of playing the base knock around which the entire team bats and you're still going at a strike rate of 180, it shows a lot about how good you are and how good the batting conditions were, of course. And talking about SRH, I feel they did eventually understand the best way to bowl on those in those conditions, but it was too late. Similar to what Karthik Tyagi did today, you saw Jaydev Unadkat and Harshal Patel, not quite, but Jaydev Unadkat definitely, with his uh, Kathua balls, as they call it, Katori balls. He did decently well, and David Payne, I did talk about him a bit.
David Payne looked quite good. I had never seen him before and he reminded me of Marco Jansen. I think SRH will really utilize him a lot because they really need bowlers like him this time.
Yeah, so one thing that I wanted to talk about is, of course, the pitches, and I think that the pitches weren't the best or weren't the most competitive, and bowlers at times felt like they were bowling machines, definitely. But I would also like to say that these were two extreme examples that we'll see, at least in the
Correct.
opening games, because those were two of the best batting attacks going against two of the worst bowling attacks. I'm
On
talking
two
about
of
the
the best historically batting friendly pitches.
yeah. So it may seem that the games were quite high scoring and one sidedly favored towards batting, but I would like to wait for a bit longer before saying that this IPL is of no use to watch, because I still have a bit of a hope that some of the pitches in other grounds will be better. And of course, bowling attacks like SRH and KKR will get plummeted anywhere, irrespective of the conditions. So One thing that I would like to see is a few more even contests in the next week or so. That would be really good for me, and I'm sure a lot of fans enjoy such matches over 250 plays 230 games.
Yeah, absolutely. I think today and even yesterday, actually, RCB really showed that if you have a plan and if you stick to it, it's not really easy to attack because I think SRH never really were above 10 runs per over, which is a very commendable effort from RCB. And even today with Mumbai, even though KKR got away very strongly in the power play, they managed to pull things back quite strongly. And it's not by taking wickets because KKR lost only 4 wickets at the end. But MI just bowled in the right areas. And yes, they had the best bowlers in the world, but even bowlers like Shardul and Trent bowled. And to an extent, I would say Allah Ghaznfar, after going big in his first over, they did manage to pull things back and they managed to contain the team. So I don't think it's all about batting. It's just about poor execution when it comes to bowling. And like you said, in our predictions as well, we had mentioned that SRH and KKR will be towards the bottom because of the bowling. So once we start seeing bowling attacks like RR or Gujarat or Punjab, I think that's when we'll come to know the actual reality of how this IPL is going to be.
Yeah, and I also feel that over a culmination of the last few games, I feel that Chinnaswamy has been tipped by the Wankhede as the most batting friendly venue. And I just feel this is because Wankhede is a more truer track, and the bounce especially helps the batters. I know bowlers also enjoy it when you've got quality bowlers, but not everyone knows how to make use of those conditions, and it's not going to suit everyone. But Chinnaswamy, I think the ball kind of sticks into the pitch in some cases, and that is a bit easier to get away with as a bowler with less skills than at the Wankhede. So I feel that has changed. Chinnaswamy has a reputation of being the most batting friendly track of the entire tournament, but I no longer feel that. At times, and in Wankhede, you do get good pitches for bowling as well. You have seen quite a few games, especially the one MI versus KKR last year was one of those games where MI bowled them out for 110. But most often, I think Wankhede is now a better pitch for batting.
Yeah, I also find it quite sad that pitches like Chennai and Lucknow are starting to support more batting because that was a nice variation in the IPL because historically when you had MS Dhoni leading CSK, you always knew that when you go to Chennai and if you're chasing even 150, the game is almost over because with the spin attack that CSK used to have, they would just strangle you and basically suffocate you to death. But now I think CSK they'll have to completely change their philosophy because we saw in the World Cup that Chennai has completely transformed and it's become a true batting wicket, similar to Hyderabad as well. So a lot more batting tracks. But I wanted to mention my perspective. I think it's the pitches obviously have something to do with this, but it's also the impacts of rule that has contributed a lot to the way cricket is being played in the IPL. Because I saw a very shocking stat that since 2008, when the IPL started, to 2022, the amount of 200 plus totals that were scored was just 133 in 15 years. And then since 2023, when they launched the impacts of rule, till now, we have already seen 137 200 plus scores. So in just 5 years, not even five, 4 years and a few matches, they have already surpassed over 15 years of collective 200 plus totals, which is a joke. And I therefore think if they remove the impacts of rule, I think we'll go back to a bit more even contest because teams won't really have the flexibility to just swap out a bowler and bring a batter in, so they'll have to be a bit more careful. But unfortunately, the BCCI they confirmed that the impacts of rule is staying even for next year. So they don't seem to understand this common sense, which is really sad.
Yeah, honestly, I can't see why BCCI would want to remove it. From BCCI's perspective, you're getting high scoring games which let's be honest, the casual fans enjoy fours and sixes all the time. It's going to take a while before they start getting bored of this, and then you might see something. But right now, T20 cricket is all about entertainment, at least for the casuals, and so they like fours and sixes, and so the broadcasters benefit from it, and it hasn't in any ways, or at least hasn't shown to have caused any impact on the cricket Indian team's performance in T20s. They've actually gone on to win two trophies since the impact rule was introduced. I'm sure in the long run it's going to have a mental shift and
Yeah.
the mindset of new players, because nobody would like to become a all-rounder anymore, because it's not going to be valued as much if this rule goes on. So it will happen in the future, but at the moment I can't really blame the BCCI or the broadcasters for going in favor of the impact rule.
Yeah, I think Shubman Gill and Akshar Patel were asked about this during the captain's interview or the photo shoot, whatever they had. And Gill specifically said that he was against the rule because of the implication that you don't really need any all-rounders in the side. And Akshar Patel also said that. He said that no one is going to take up my role in the future and it's going to hamper the Indian cricket in the future. But I wanted to ask you, since you follow a lot of cricket around the world, how much do you think this is down to the impact sub, or do you think international cricket itself has collectively become more attacking and is 220 the new 200 now?
I think it has got a lot to do with the impact sub. And when you pair it with such conditions, I think it is even more exploitable. In other leagues around the world, like the Big Bash, you don't see this as regularly. Though I would say the median score has still gone up, but not this dramatically. If it was around 160 till 5 years or 6 years back, I think now it might have gone up to 180. And that is something we also saw in the IPL, but in the IPL it has just kept on going up, whereas everywhere else it has kind of plateaued a bit, I would say. And I remember 160 games used to genuinely be uh, like we would be excited to see what will happen in the second innings, chasing 160, at least up till I would say 2022 as well in the IPL. And then in 23 onwards, I think the impact rule was introduced in 24,
23.
23, yeah.
But
And
teams got used to it maybe in 24.
yeah,
So,
so even in 23, you had 185, 190 max being like the par score. But I think in the last season and this season especially, we have seen even 200, 200 being the new 160, I would say, where you are genuinely excited to see what will happen. Anything below that, and it's kind of obvious who's going to win. So that, I don't know if the mindset of the fans should change or will, because people are used to it and things change over time. But I think people who are used to it aren't ready to accept it. Maybe this is how the game had to evolve, and so it has, and maybe the fans need to cope with it.
yeah,
But I
I
can't.
remember. Yeah, exactly. Neither can I. Kevin Peterson, he said something quite interesting today during commentary because after KKR got to 220, he was discussing with Harsha Bhogle and they were saying that this is 15 runs short. And Kevin Peterson then said, he spoke to the fan and said that yes, this is as surprising as you think. Because even 3 years back, or 4 years back, when I remember MI were chasing 219, I think against CSK in Delhi, we all remember how much of an effort it took for them to win that match. It felt like they were striking for almost the entire match and they were still in an impossible situation. And it took Karan Pollard brilliance to win that match. And today, when they were chasing 220, not even for 1 over, it looked like they were behind. And it's very funny, and I think it will take a lot of time for not even long-term viewers, but viewers who have been watching for even 4 5 years. It's going to take a lot of time to reset your brain because now even Hardik said that 240 is the new difficult total in T20s, and when they saw 220 on the board, they were quite confident that they could chase it down.
Yeah, I think the game that you mentioned exactly is the great way to show how impact rule has changed the mindset, because I wouldn't say that the conditions are any better than those in Delhi that you had, where
Yeah.
220 was chased by MI. But of course, there wasn't the impact rule there, and that's why you had at least some sort of thinking in the player's head that he needs to take his time or not be as play risky shots from the get go, because at some point the batting will end. And with the impact rule, that extra cushion that you get has really liberated the batters, and you know that even if you lose 4 wickets, you still have got two more proper batters who can win you games on their own to come. So that kind of thought in their head has kind of helped them in going all guns blazing without thinking too much about the risk, and they can focus on the reward. And when these conditions, you get these conditions and you have that mindset, more often than not you're going to get rewarded, and the risk factor just completely dies.
Yeah. I think a similar thing happened yesterday, which I mentioned in the video, where in the past, if let's say SRH had lost 3 wickets in the power play, then there was no chance they were getting to 200, because they would have been quite cautious and they would have struggled their way to maybe a 170 or 180. But yesterday they easily got to 200, which obviously wasn't enough, but it just shows that the par score is now shifted by about 20 runs up. Anyways, I think that's a big rant about the situation that we have no control over. But all in all, compared to your expectations, are you happy with the way the first two matches have played out? And what's your initial assessment?
Yeah, uh, I think the games were a bit too one-sided. I would have, even if they were high scoring, I would have loved to see at least one last over thriller or a close game. But both of them were pretty one-sided. I feel that people are happy because the players that they like have won, and of course, that would have been different if, let's say, SRH got rid of RCB in the same fashion.
Yeah.
But I think the pitches is something you have to get used to, because that is what the broadcasters and everyone who's managing this tournament have kind of shown their intentions with the last year and even in these two games, that this is going to be the new norm. So we have to make do with it. We'll get a couple of 180 games here and there, but mostly I don't see the score falling below 200. And uh, I think with a lot of high scoring games, the issue is it gets boring after a while. And when the 4 and 6 is not an event and a dot ball is an event, that is when most people, that is a tipping point for most of them. But I think you just have to get used to it. In the remaining games, at least in this opening weekend or opening week, I would like to see most of the youngsters coming out well, because this is the time where you get to know who is going to do good things in the season. Like last time you had Vipraj Nigam coming out of nowhere in the very first game. You had Digvish Rathi as well. So I can see something like that happening. And especially when teams are filled with youngsters like CSK, and even to some extent you've got Punjab Kings again. So I would like to see how the youngsters go in the remaining games.
Yeah, that's a great segue to the rest of the matches coming up. We'll just talk about the next three, because with that, every team would have played one match. So today, as this podcast goes out, we have Rajasthan Royals taking on Chennai Super Kings. This match is in Guwahati, and there are a few injury concerns already for the CSK. MS Dhoni, the big name, I think he's the man almost every single fan of CSK is supporting the team for. And unfortunately, he won't be playing for the first 2 weeks because of a calf strain. And I actually feel that this won't be a 2 week thing. It might go on for a few more days. What's your thought about that? Because MS Dhoni, he's been preparing for this tournament for almost 6-7 months, and now that it's time, he's injured. Do you think it's a big setback for them, or it's a hidden advantage?
Yeah, I would like to think a bit ahead and say this is a conspiracy. I would like to give you my conspiracy theory to whatever has happened. I feel that this is a great move by the CSK management, because they want to keep Dhoni away and see how the team does. And if things go South, which they are expected to go without him, then he'll come back and say, I was just injured for 2 weeks, that's why I was out. And if things go really well, they can take the liberty to keep him out, saying that the injury is aggravated. And you never know, that might be the end of it. He might play a game in Chennai just because he wanted to play his last game in Chennai. But I think this is a great way to plant that seed into people in the fans' heads that he's injured, and if he misses games, nobody will question the management or nobody will say that he's moved on. People just keep assuming that he's injured, but I won't be surprised if this is a way to soft launch his retirement and you might not even see him feature in a single game this season and just retire because he's already got that farewell event in Chennai before the season started.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take. I think he genuinely must be injured, or I don't think he would be fully injured, but there might be a niggle and they don't want to aggravate it because he's obviously 44 or 43 now, which is well beyond the average age of a cricketer nowadays. So there could be a part of that because if they wanted to not have him, they could have asked him to retire because he's obviously not expected to be playing the IPL at this age. So even if he would have retired, I think everybody would have understood that it's time. Otherwise, I think he could have played the first match just to show everybody that he's still fit and he's around. And then you can always say that yeah, he got injured after the match or something like that. So I'm not quite sure that this is a deliberate move, but it very well could be, and it could be MS Dhoni's idea himself because I think Ruturaj Gaikwad mentioned in an interview recently that MS Dhoni now doesn't even attend team meetings, and he said to Ruturaj Gaikwad himself that if you ask me for advice, you don't have to really use it. So feel free to not even ask me for advice. So he's trying his best to put all the responsibility to over to Gaikwad because that's something CSK have struggled because they've tried to bring in new captains, but because of MS Dhoni's presence, all of the responsibility of decision making is always on him. So Dhoni very well could just avoid being on the field so that Gaikwad has to take the calls in real time.
Yeah, that is a interesting thing because Dhoni has never really been away from the team, and when he is on the field, there's no way you're not going to ask him for inputs. So this is actually a great way. If it indeed is a 2 week layoff for him, this is a good way to see how CSK does without Dhoni's advice or without Dhoni kind of managing players on the field. And they've got Sanju Samson instead of him, who's decently good. And
Yeah.
after Dhoni, I would say he's the best available player for that role in CSK. So that's a good move. And now that I think of it, I saw Sanju Samson doing fielding drills at the boundary. So maybe it wasn't planned for Dhoni to go away. Or maybe they want to get in Karthik Sharma to keep. You never know. But I think one thing that this has ensured, Dhoni's injury, is that the other youngsters get a chance to play for sure. You've
Yeah.
got Karthik Sharma, and I think you had Urvil Patel and Sarfaraz and Mhatre, all of them in a kind of a mess because all of them couldn't be fitted into the playing 11. Now you've got Brevis and Dhoni both injured, so more options open up for CSK.
Yeah, it's very sad to see Brevis get injured. He was my vote for emerging player, but if he doesn't play, then I'll probably have to change it. But who do you see coming in his place? Do you see Ayush Mhatre getting a chance now, and they might play Sanju or Gaikwad down, or do you just see a clear swap with Sarfaraz or someone else?
Yeah, I think Urvil Patel now should definitely start because he is someone who can replicate Brevis's job, which is to just take down spin, especially, and in the middle order. So I feel Sanju and Gaikwad will open, and at three you might see Urvil, and then Karthik and Sarfaraz. You might see all of them play, and then of course you've got Shivam Dubey. So it will be difficult to have so many top order batters or players who prefer to play in the top order, but one of them has to come in the middle because they're lacking that balance or kind of power lower in the batting. Shivam Dubey also, if you remember, likes to bat in the top, but he's definitely not going to do that in this side. He's the only finisher they have right now, except if Karthik Sharma does well, but at the moment he's the only trusted finisher. So it's going to be difficult, but I feel that they can also get in Matt Short into the mix and he can bat in the top three as well.
Yeah, and with these two injuries, I think it's looking quite difficult now for CSK because right now, when you were mentioning the batting order, there's basically no experience in the middle three because you've got Urvil, Karthik Sharma, and Sarfaraz who are fairly inexperienced blokes and they've never played for CSK. So it will be very exciting to see how they live up to the expectations. And
Yeah,
they're playing
I think
RR, which
my four
yeah.
overseas players would be Matt Short, Noor Ahmed, Matt Henry, and Jamie Overton or Akil Hossain, depending on the conditions. But in Guwahati, I would say Jamie Overton.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that as well. It's a very weird looking CSK attack. They don't have a lot of all rounders, and as you said, only Shivam Dubey as the finisher. So they really depend a lot on the openers. So it will be great to see how they go. And on the other side, you have RR, who haven't had any injury concerns. I think they missed out on Sam Curran, but other than that, everybody else is fit, which is good. And it's a an aptly set up contest because you have Sanju Samson taking on his former team and Ravindra Jadeja taking on his former team. So who do you see coming out as the winner in this match?
It's going to be a really hard game for CSK. That's what I see happening. RR have got the upper hand for me because CSK is very inexperienced, and unless for a freak performance from one of their newbies, I see Rajasthan Royals taking this game.
Yeah, I also agree with that. I don't think it's going to be a close game at all. CSK could one-sidedly win or they could one-sidedly lose. So it will not be a close game. I can say that for sure. And then the next two games that are on Tuesday and Wednesday, it's Punjab versus Gujarat, which is a game I'm looking forward to because both the teams were in the playoffs last time. And then you have the North Indian derby with Lucknow Super Giants and Delhi Capitals. Another time, Lucknow are playing the last match to kick off the tournament, so not a lot of priority given to them by the
I think
BCCI.
match 4 and match 5 are a repeat from last year. Those were the exact same
Oh
games.
yeah, correct, correct.
But this time I think it's in Mulampur and Lucknow. So they've just
Lucknow.
reversed the fixture, the venue.
Yeah, so those will happen on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we have the teams will start playing their second matches. So we'll be back for the next week. A lot of games are happening between that, so we'll have a lot more to talk about. We have talked so much only after two games, so imagine what will happen after the next double header on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And hopefully teams aren't plagued with more injuries the upcoming games because you want to see the best go against the best, and hopefully we get more quality games. I've given up on the conditions, but at least if we can get close games, I would be a bit happier than I am right now. Anyways, IPL is off to a fire start in terms of the build up, at least. The games haven't lived up yet, but I'm sure they will at some point. So at that point, we will come back and talk about those games and everything in between. Until then, it's a goodbye from us.
स्टेडियम में शोर है एनर्जी ऑन द फ्लोर है दिस इज द अनफिल्टर्ड फीड